Hey everyone, I'm the pro wrestling VTuber dedicated to love and justice, Kit Saberfang. And have you noticed that no matter where you look, wherever it is you turn to for your daily dose of pro wrestling discourse, like the sicko you are, no one seems to have anything nice to say about All Elite Wrestling. And yeah, sure, AEW has its fair share of problems. Every company does. But people really make it their entire content strategy and personalities to spew hatred at this one company. And fortunately, this isn't going to be one of those videos. The Kit Sabergift arc will have to wait. And I don't like to criticize unless I also have something constructive to offer in return. So today, I thought I'd share with you 5 changes to AEW that I'd like to see made that I feel would improve the product from a fan perspective. This feels like a much better use of my time than dwelling on all the current issues that I have with the AE double because if I let those intrusive thoughts win, we might not ever get to this video. I'd just be thinking for hours about how the Will Ospreay Tiger Driver drama makes no sense. They're cooling off Hangman again. Why is Saraya still allowed on television? Bryan Danielson was Tiger driven into the AEW Championship. Eddie Kingston is injured. Queen Aminata hit the Tiger Driver on Athena, and she kicked out just fine. Riho is injured. The Lucha Bros are leaving. Inosuke Takeshita still isn't a champion. Azumi is doing Tiger Destroyers out here in Stardom. Give it up, bruv.
Yes,
No, it's not that kind of video. Oh, come on. We're not that hard up for views yet. AEW has reignited the wrestling world on a global scale, and I've absolutely felt it. And when the original All In happened, I wasn't surprised it sold out because I knew the hunger for a different kind of wrestling on a major scale was just waiting to be tapped into. What did surprise me though was how quickly AEW fell together and got on air. I remember not even feeling like Dynamite was real. All my favorites from the Indies, Mexico, and Japan were on weekly broadcast television in the US. Something I always dreamt of, but never thought could actually happen. And just this small thread of competition forced WWE to respond to the market in a way they hadn't needed to in decades, and in turn, completely overhauled the way they produce its shows, among other palpable changes. And having a new major promotion that's open to their talent working outside dates helped reinvigorate the indies in a post-pandemic world, while also providing a new major platform for international stars to make their mark. The existence of AEW has also swung the negotiating power back towards the wrestlers themselves, benefiting from the overall stronger market for wrestling and more alternatives to make a living. With more opportunities for wrestlers to work, there's greater incentive for these promotions to do what it takes to secure top talent and deliver. It can also be pretty fun to just watch sometimes when you don't got some 80-year-old bitch in your ear telling you it sucks. We may never understand what it is exactly about AEW simply continuing to exist that drives some people absolutely cuckoo bananas.
Other than decades of completely unchallenged labor-inducing propaganda by a machine hell-bent on ensuring no other wrestling company can ever be considered legitimate.
But here's a hot take for you. Even if you think that AEW is the worstest, most smelliest wrestling company there ever was, and you haktua on its totally inevitable grave, I can guarantee there's at least some aspect of WWE's product that you're enjoying today that would not exist were it not for All Elite Wrestling. Hey CM Punk, how's it going? So, all this to say, I may complain about how things are today in AEW, but it's because I truly want to see it continue to grow and improve, and to provide a strong mainstream alternative for pro wrestling fans in the West. I'll spare you the details, but in a past life, I may have been something of a Corbo gonk myself, and while I managed to resist most of that world's conditioning, there is one lesson that stuck with me, and that's finding the opportunity in every challenge. And when I look at AEW from a fan perspective, and I see its problems, I also can't help but see all the opportunities that exist within them to pivot and try something else, to take better advantage of the strengths and assets they already possess. And I hope you see that in some of these ideas. Okay, so before we jump into this list, I'd appreciate it as always if you hit that like and subscribe. Subscribing to my channel is the best and easiest way to show your support for all of my efforts. We're quickly approaching 500 subscribers, and that's pretty amazing. And so I'm incredibly appreciative for all your love and support. Okay, Let's get into it. We're starting with a spicy suggestion, one that might actually be more controversial than you think. So, unfortunately for AEW, ticket sales have been fairly weak for the past year or so, leading to attendees publishing a string of, let's say, unflattering photos that paints a more dire picture of the company. It's silly stuff, but it has caused something of a perception problem for the company, one that says it can't fill the arenas that they're booking. And that's probably because they're not filling the arenas that they're booking. I'd love to see AEW turn this negative into a positive by moving away from the generic sports arenas that they and WWE love so much, and instead find smaller, more visually distinct venues that they can absolutely sell out. The immediate benefits beyond saving on rentals is creating a better experience for those in attendance, while providing a more unique visual experience for those at home. I don't know about you, but I'll always take a smaller yet passionate crowd in an appropriately sized venue over a crowd multitudes in size in a mostly empty open-air arena. And I'm sure we're all aware of this, but wrestling rings don't change in size depending on the arena it's placed in. Whether you're watching wrestling with 80,000 people in Wembley or with 8 people at the bingo hall down the street, it's still just going to be a 20 by 20 foot ring. And while it's not as if the fields shift around like Smash Brother platforms in traditional sports or anything, but the action at least moves about the stadium a lot more during, say, a football, baseball, or basketball game when compared to your typical pro wrestling match. Your view at the start of the game isn't going to be your view throughout the game, you know what I'm saying? The same goes for live music as well. There's a time and a place for the big stadium blowout epic tour, but I know I'm always going to have a better experience at a smaller club or theater. The best concerts I've ever been to have been when I see some of the biggest stars playing their smaller shows, and the intimacy and the experience of the performance always plays a huge role in that. So while I understand the overall optics and the business of why producing shows in larger arenas is better, I'm also not here to crunch those numbers. I just want to see the best wrestling show possible. And so for me, personally, I wouldn't mind seeing AEW in smaller venues. There's also an opportunity in making the venue sizes work for the shows themselves. For example, you could give Evil Uno a budget to run his mystery wrestling shows as a Collision special and play into the idea of Uno producing the show. And on the other end of the spectacle spectrum, you'd be saving the larger venues and arenas for the bigger events and pay-per-views, which could help those shows stand apart and actually feel more special. When I think about the most iconic pro wrestling venues in the world, my mind immediately goes to Korakuen Hall, Hammerstein Ballroom, KBS Hall, the Dallas Sportatorium, the American Legion in Reseda, the Temple. And you want to know what all those venues have in common? Oh, they small. Sure, there are arenas and even stadiums that are iconic in their own ways, but is Madison Square Garden really that visually distinct when compared to, say, the TD Garden? Wembley is cool from a historical perspective, but are there any shots AEW get from that venue that are any more memorable than this sunset flip at sunset from Daly's Place? It happened in a parking lot, y'all. There's an opportunity in being the promotion that finds new and interesting venues while creating a visually distinct product in the process. Being an alternative means changing people's perspective. I'm just suggesting a very literal shift in this case. And speaking of perspectives, this leads me to my next suggestion. Something that's always kind of bothered me about AEW is how it's essentially shot and produced nearly the same as WWE, with its reliance on the stationary hard cam perspective paired with odd production choices like the constant camera cuts and sweeping angles that, while appear visually interesting, ultimately inform the viewer that the in-ring action only matters when the camera says it does. Wrestlers having to awkwardly face everything towards one direction of the ring, which, again, ultimately informs the viewer that unless the wrestlers are angling towards that hard cam, it's probably not the finish. Gross. You want to know where you can find wrestling that doesn't fall into these traps? Japan. The best way to explain the difference in Western and Japanese wrestling production is that in the West, it's up to the wrestlers to find the camera, where in Japan, it's more on the cameras to find the wrestlers. You follow me? While hardcam setups are utilized as well, ringside cameras are offered greater emphasis in the production, often shooting action between the ropes. Not only does this give a much more intimate view of the action, but it also lets you more clearly see the emotions and smaller details on display. The low angles offer greater exaggeration of aerial and top rope moves, complemented by longer, sustained shots that help viewers make greater sense of all the action. Let's talk about crash zooms. While WWE has gotten much better about this, I feel the 2010s era of frantic and oftentimes disorientating cuts and zooms has given these simple tools a bad name. The use of snap or crash zooms among Japanese wrestling production is more oftentimes than not sublime and enhances the viewing experience in ways that honestly having Western productions feeling a bit lifeless in comparison. AEW has made great use of dramatic zooms during character moments such as the best friend's hug or Tony Storm's close-ups. So now I'd like to see them incorporated a bit more into the action itself. When done correctly, they can really add that extra punch to impacts and emphasize emotional moments. Another aspect of Japanese pro wrestling that always stands out to me when compared to the West is how busy their ringside areas tend to be. Photographers, cameramen, ringside crew, fellow wrestlers. It can get a bit crowded outside. And when you go back and you watch older WWF shows, you'll actually find a lot of these same elements. It all combines to create this real kinetic energy around the ring and the event, one that implies the greater effort that's going on to make this show possible and provides additional spontaneous drama for when all these different elements intersect. This is one of those things that I think disappeared because one insane old man decided it sucked, actually, and that the only people present should be the ones involved in the match. Because, you know, when you watch a basketball game, you don't see any other players courtside. When you watch a football game, there's not literally dozens of people lining the field, each performing their own duties. Same goes for combat sports, boxing, MMA, even goofy-ass slap fights have a more believable ringside crew than most Western wrestling shows. It's always felt like a missed opportunity to not make seconding culture more of a thing in Western pro wrestling, establish a wider range of relationships among the roster for viewers, and give those lower down the card at least some opportunity to get more face time with the audience. These smaller production and dressing elements really go a long way in establishing connections with the audience. It meant that when the future Switchblade Jay White made his Young Lion debut in New Japan, I immediately clocked him as one of the ringside boys that I'd seen months prior. And so I already had something of a connection to someone I didn't even realize I was going to see wrestling. I just thought of him as Ice Pack Lad. And now look at him. He's a mega champ. You did it, Ice Pack Lad. Proud of you, buddy. We saw AEW do this a lot during the Daily's Place pandemic era by getting talent more involved on the sidelines. Back then, it was more out of necessity, but when handled correctly, it can be effective in ways you can't really plan for. Oh my god, we get it. Japan is great.
Does this freaky little wolf boy ever talk about anything else?
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair. Fortunately, there's plenty of inspiration to be found all over the world of wrestling. And for this next suggestion, we're taking a trip down to Mexico. One of the shining jewels of AEW's earlier days was its absolutely stacked tag team division. And while it's grown stagnant over the past year or so, renewing interest in its tag teams can be as easy as a fix as, say, I don't know, featuring teams not called the Young Bucks or FTR. The talent is still there, so that's not much of a concern for me. However, if the tag team division is merely stagnant, the trios division is at best on life support. One of the biggest challenges facing a 3v3 trios division in any wrestling promotion is how to make it feel unique when compared to a 2v2 tag team match, aside from having the extra bodies involved. One answer can be found in Lucha Libre, where the AEW partnered promotion CMLL has a unique set of rules to help trios stand apart. In a CMLL trios match, each team assigns a captain, and matches are set at 2 falls for a win. The team captain is worth 2 falls themselves, so if they're pinned or submitted, the match is over right there. Other team members are worth 1 fall apiece, and are eliminated from the match if pinned or submitted, leading to a 3-on-2 advantage for the scoring team. These extra little wrinkles to the rule set can lead to all manner of drama, and adds a new flavor to an already established formula. AEW doesn't really have a regular elimination style match format like WWE does its traditional Survivor Series matches, so incorporating elements of it into a trios division is another way to help make it stand apart. That's not the only change I had in mind for the trios division. I also see it as an opportunity to introduce a concept that AEW has teased plenty of times, but have yet to fully pull the trigger on. And I'm talking about intergender competition. All Elite Wrestling has had a number of intergender feuds during its young history, and even has one going right now as this video is being published with Willow Nightingale and Stokely Hathaway. When it comes to getting all this in the ring, however, they've fallen back on established mixed tag rules set by WWE, which stipulates that only men can fight men and women can only fight women. And whenever these matches happen, you can just feel the air be sucked out of an arena with each tag, because it essentially amounts to a timeout in a sport that has no real concept of it. It's corny, it's limiting, and ultimately means that any intergender rivalries have no payoff in the traditional pro wrestling sense of defeating their tormentor in a match, because it's going to be someone only tangentially related scoring the win. There are a number of known reasons why AEW in its current state doesn't book intergender matches. First and foremost, CEO Tony Khan has gone on the record stating that he doesn't enjoy it himself and even likened it to violence, which that's a big oof, and we'll address that in a moment. So that's probably the biggest factor going against it. There's also been a number of old heads in the company like Jim Ross and Mark Henry who are uncomfortable with the idea of women being seen as equals in the ring in general. And of course, there are the television and product advertisers who don't want another Domino's pizza situation, only this time with a pretty blonde girl for everyone to clutch pearls over. I know I'm being a bit glib about all this, but all right. You know what? I didn't think that we'd have to do this so soon, but all right. If you could just join me over here for a moment, camera 2, if you will.
Hey there, pal. So there's no real way to sugarcoat this, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. You know it's fake, right? That it's all a stage play, more or less. Kind of like how when you go watch a movie and Captain America is punching out the bad guys, you know? You understand that's just an act, right? So we're all clear so far, okay? Yes, the hits can be real at times, and you can't fake gravity, and they're putting their lives on the line, yada yada yada. The point I'm trying to make here is, pro wrestling, when distilled down to its very essence, is a morality play, being performed by consenting adults who tell their story through the language of consensual violence. Meaning, everyone you see on television participating in a pro wrestling match, from the wrestlers themselves, the referees, the commentators, down to the security and doctors at ringside, they're all in on it. And that all the people involved understand that the people in the ring discussed all of this beforehand, that they are all fully aware and cognizant of what they've signed up for, and that the preceding violence has been preordained. So when I hear intergender pro wrestling being likened to something as heinous as real-world domestic violence, I find it disrespectful to actual DV victims who absolutely did not agree to be inflicted with real aggravated non-consensual violence. Okay? So let's all stop using that as an excuse, because it has absolutely nothing to do with the art and performance of pro wrestling, and only serves to infantize the women who are doing the same work in that ring as the men. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, then just say that. Okay? Just express your feelings. Express and explore the reasons why you feel the way you do. Okay? That's what we gotta do. That's what grown-ups do here, okay? Alright, buddy? You good? Alright, let's get back out there. Okay, let's get back to the wrestling.
Okay, that felt good to let out. I know there are plenty of challenges facing the idea of All Elite Wrestling utilizing intergender matches, but I also see it as a huge opportunity to do something truly fresh and something that you already know the competition isn't going to touch. Society has moved well beyond the need for the mixed match rule set. Okay? All right. Moving on. Here's a lighter subject for sure. All Elite Wrestling has 3 weekly televised shows, 4 if you want to count Ring of Honor. But it's only really ever felt like Dynamite matters. I suppose Collision had its own identity at the start, for better or worse, but AEW's B shows typically feel like less than that. The difference between Dynamite and Rampage isn't like, say, Raw compared to SmackDown, where there's equal talent, story, and considerations being made across the two shows, but more like Raw when compared to something like WWE's Main Event. And which, yeah, they still make, by the way. Bet you weren't really aware of that. Yeah, you get better matchups and at least something of consequence to the proceedings, but ultimately, I'm not really seeing the connective tissue between any of the shows, really. If you're only watching Dynamite, then you pretty much know everything you need to with AEW. And that's kind of a shame because those shows are valuable and feature a wider array of talent from its roster. So what's to be done about it? One suggestion I have would be to designate one of those shows as the true B show to Dynamite and just hammer that home. Giving fans a sense of which of the additional shows to prioritize would be a huge help, because as it stands, I see Rampage and Collision as interchangeable, with really only the branding and scheduling being the difference. I've also heard suggestions of making one show dedicated to its women's division, but my fear there is that it actually have the opposite effect than intended, causing fans who don't want to see women's wrestling to tune out completely, or by taking women's matches or feuds away from other shows altogether just to fill up the one that they have. Instead, they could potentially have Rampage go back to its original identity as the fastest hour of wrestling on television by dedicating it to just that, a faster pace of wrestling. Highlight more cruiserweight style competitors, more tags and trio matches. It's only an hour-long show anyway, so why not just have one that's just dedicated to total nonstop action? Any way you slice them up, there's gotta be a better way to present these shows and give viewers more incentive to tune in, because the way things are, these B shows are kind of ignorable. This last suggestion is something AEW fans have been screaming about for years now, and if you're a longtime fan, you know exactly where I'm coming from with this. We have got to talk about AEW's merch game. Okay, of all the issues we've discussed today, this is the one where I basically have nothing nice or possibly even constructive to say, so please buckle in for that. But on a positive note, there's really nowhere to go for them but up, because where they're at now is having quite possibly the worst merch setup in sports today. Not just wrestling. I'm talking all of sports. Period. I know minor league baseball teams who are better at merch than this company. If you're an AEW fan looking to spend money to show your support, you're having a miserable time out there. Let's start with a look into their t-shirts, always the most prominent piece of wrestling merch. They put that tiny AEW logo on everything. That right there, honestly, that's immediately disqualifying for me. No matter the design, my eyes always immediately go to that teeny out of place logo that clashes with the rest of the design. This is something they lifted from how WWE used to design their merch, and notice how I said used to, because WWE stopped doing this ages ago, probably because they realized being immediately clocked as a wrestling fan in public is not exactly high on most people's social desires. You feel me? But it's not just about poor logo placements. That would be silly. It's also about how they've been known to use AI-generated images for their t-shirts. So not only are they cranking out some of the worst designs in the business today, but they're also stealing from existing artists by using AI generation tools. This sucks, I know. But making matters worse is that All Elite Wrestling has a nasty habit of going after fan artists that are actually producing related merch that people want to buy. A practice so outdated and so poor in taste that the Walt Disney Company of all entities actively stopped doing this years ago, instead actively monitoring their fan art community and just basically treats it like open source market research. This is the same Walt Disney Company that would sue daycares for painting Disney characters on their wall to make children happy. Do you realize how crazy that is? AEW could also very easily just hire these artists to create items for them in-house. But they don't, so instead, they're destroying the secondhand fan market and disenfranchising some of their biggest supporters in the process. Again, this is a lesson that Disney learned a long time ago. Their shirts are also print on demand by ProWrestlingTees.com, a company best known for questionable quality and massive data breaches, which means that they're expensive, they take forever to arrive upon ordering, and I hope you sprung for that extra soft tee because otherwise they'll print them on cardboard. This may explain why, on top of all of this, which, by the way, if you're keeping track, we're still only talking about their t-shirts, it may explain why when AEW comes to your town, they bring practically nothing in terms of merch for sale. When you go to a WWE show, whether it's a big pay-per-view or a local house show, they bring what essentially amounts to a Hot Topics worth of merchandise. Everything you could want, from t-shirts for a variety of performers, to foam fingers and masks, replica belts, hats, sweaters, action figures, you name it. And of course, that's to be expected from the biggest brand in the business. Totally. But even when I go to a New Japan Pro Wrestling show here in the US, they bring what feels like its entire warehouse worth of merchandise, sometimes taking up an entire arena hallway to cram it all in. The last New Japan show I went to, I bought t-shirts, a support towel, trading cards, my Daryl plushie, which I absolutely did not expect to see. Quite frankly, I spent a lot. And that's fine because I was happy to do so. But every AEW show I've been to, they bring the absolute bare minimum for sale. It's usually an AEW logo shirt or two, an event shirt with your town's name or a pay-per-view title on it, a hat, and if you're really lucky, some type of additional item, like maybe a replica belt or a Scissor Me Daddy foam finger. And you're lucky if you can even buy anything, because I remember going to Forbidden Door and the event shirt was already mostly sold out 20 minutes after doors opened. The All In London merch offerings this year were by all accounts somehow worse than the previous All In London's offerings, down to just a basic event t-shirt. When I went to Philadelphia for Effie's Big Gay Brunch this year, Effie alone had more items and greater diversity of merch than the entirety of what AEW is bringing to sell at its major events. Okay? An indie wrestler should not be able to pack more t-shirts and action figures in their suitcase than a billion-dollar owned professional wrestling company that also has a t-shirt company in its back pocket. It's maddening! Oh, alright. I could very easily bang on about this for hours. If this video was just about AEW's absolute fumbling of one of the most basic and fundamental revenue drivers for any professional wrestling company in the world, it'd probably be about 12 hours long. And listen, I don't even care about the money or who's profiting from it. I truly don't care. I'm just a fan who wants to see wrestling and maybe sometimes buy a nice hoodie to go along with it, or maybe some cute stickers, I don't know. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why they can't sort out this part of the business. It truly baffles me. You're probably thinking to yourself, Kit, you are getting way too fired up about this. But let me just tell you one more little small story about AEW's merch department that is truly upsetting to me. And I know this video is supposed to be about what could be done differently, and I'm doing a lot of complaining here, but I just want you to think about this one. All Elite Wrestling employed the icon, Sting, for about 4 years. And during those 4 years, and his countless appearances and show-stealing performances, on top of being one of the best revenue drivers on Pro Wrestling Tees, they never once produced a Sting mask for sale? And since they never had a Sting mask for sale, when Sting had to do his famous bit where he disguises himself as himself using a replica Sting mask, they didn't have one. So instead, someone had to go down to catering, grab a paper plate and a Sharpie, and make baby's first crafting project so that Sting could have a fake Sting mask. This is incomprehensible to me. And if I think about it for any longer, I think my brain is gonna eject out my skull, and I don't think this model is rigged for that. So it'll look so bad All right. So what's the solution? I don't know, bro. You tell me. You're the billionaire, TK. That's right. I know you're watching. I know you're here. I know you're a secret Saber Gang member, and I appreciate you, but you got to do something about this, man. You got infinite funds to produce a bitchin' merchandise department, but for some reason it's just not clicking, and it kind of seems like it's actually getting worse as time goes on, and I just feel like this is a really big missed opportunity, TK, that maybe just have some nice things for you that maybe your fans want to buy. You know, I'm sitting here, I'm on my knees, I'm begging, I'm pleading you, Mr. Billionaire Man, please let me give you more money. That's what I'm trying to say. Corpo, that's it. This is it. Kit Saber Grift is here. Corpo Gonk era. No, we're not going there. We're not going there. But let me tell you, my guy, y'all need some help. Y'all gotta do something about this. It's super disappointing from every perspective. At every conjuncture, if someone says something bad about AEW, like, oh, I'll have all fun debate with you. Yeah, it's positives to be found in anything. Not here, dude. There ain't no positives in this one. You gotta sort this out, TK. And I didn't even get into Fight Forever, which is a whole other can of bullshit. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. You, my friend, are a real one. I'm sure the comment section is going to be real normal about this, but hey, I want the smoke. Be sure to subscribe, join the Discord, and remember, pro wrestling is for everyone, and pro wrestling can be anything.